Let's talk about validating somebody's feelings in relationships. I mean, validating people by way of helping them to build their identity and self-esteem. What do I mean by that? People have various opinions. Sometimes it's as if people's opinions do not matter, no matter how little such opinions may seem. When somebody comes up with an idea or a reaction or an opinion about what he or she is feeling, it is easy to dismiss that. It is easy to not understand what is going in somebody's life. Come on, it doesn't matter. Don't say that. Don't say that. No, that does not matter. That doesn't make sense. This is our natural reaction. We respond in a way that communicates to us. So most times our heads have solutions, our brains have solutions that are already crafted, and we are waiting to dish that out to somebody. So somebody's feelings do not make sense. When we talk about empathy, empathy means stepping right into the shoes of the other person. And I will never stop defending the fact that Jesus is the originator of empathy, and Jesus is the master or expert in showing empathy, getting right into the person's life, getting into the person's worldview, and moving from there. When we dismiss people's feelings, people's thoughts, people's opinions as irrelevant or as insignificant, what do? We puncture their ego. We puncture their self-esteem. We puncture their identity. And this happens several times in relationships. When people share opinions and thoughts, the other person comes from a different perspective, a different worldview. And that worldview communicates to you, not necessarily for you to feel the same way, but for you to appreciate where that person is coming from. If we take it to the stages of development that begins from childhood, from infancy, that process of development goes on for the entire life. For example, there are stages that psychologists, someone like Erik Erikson, puts up stages. And in Erikson's theory, there are two stages that I feel like, when I reflect on it and study that, I feel like they are very crucial. The early stages, the trust stage versus mistrust stage, the autonomy versus shame stage, these are all important. But think about it this way. When a child gets to the age of 3 to 5 years, which is the preschool age, right? They move a little outside of the family circle. So by then, they are beginning to understand a little what relationship means when they get to school, when they begin to mingle with their peers in class, when they begin to express themselves before the teacher, before other students, or before their friends. So this is a time when children begin to explore the environment and begin to take initiatives in activities and exercises. So within this period, they need a lot of support. They need a lot of encouragement to develop their sense of purpose. So when you ask a question as a teacher in class, for example, and you see hands are up, your students' hands are up. A lot of times, many of them are goofy. They don't even know the answer, but they just want to express themselves. So you hear them, hey, tell me, what is the road that leads to Z? and they will have their hands up. Their hands come up even before they think because they want to express themselves. And in that situation or context, there are options that you could take as a teacher or as a guardian. You could shut that kid down. You could go with the kid, accompany the kid, allow the kid to express himself or herself. If you shut that kid down today, the next day ask the question again. The kid will be shy to express himself or herself, even if he or she knows the answer. So a sense of doubt, a sense of loss of identity and self-esteem is beginning to creep in. So that child begins to ask the question, how would this authority figure react? How would this authority figure respond? And when the authority figure, for example, responds negatively, what does that do to me in front of my peers? That process of initiative versus guilt begins to play up in the head of this child. So this child gets to the next stage, that is the school age, the real school age, which is between 6 to 11 years. And they begin to develop a sense of competence and mastery through their schoolwork or other activities in class. And if this is successful, or if they feel successful in this stage, through praise, through acknowledgement, through validation, they feel accepted. So they develop a sense of industry, the opposite of which is inferiority. So you see how this developmental process hampers or supports the growth of this child. So if this child at the preschool age was shut down, if this child felt clamped down, if this child felt that there was no room to express himself or herself, guilt goes into inferiority. And then that inferiority becomes, I cannot express myself because of what? Because I do not do it good, because I do not do it well, because if I don't do it good, I'm shut down and I cannot be myself anymore. So the person is most likely to be less industrious, and identity is gradually punctured. And remember that the process of development does not start and stop at a certain stage. The process of development is a walk through life. And that is why attachment theory propounds that attachment figures play an important role in each person's life. From the moment we are born, our parents become our attachment figures, and then we begin to encounter authorities in various categories of life, in the school, teachers, as spouse, coaches, in the church, pastors and priests, and all those begin to do what? To play in our lives, and we get old. So we get into relationships. We also feel those who are in relationships with us to be our attachment figures. Those primary attachment figures help us to also develop our identity or to lose our identity. So when somebody already has a problem with expressing themselves in preschool, in school years, and as adults, they want to express themselves and they feel like your opinion does not matter. Your viewpoint does not matter. You don't think correctly. You don't think well. You don't think positively. You are not creative enough. That is what happens when somebody says, for example, this is what I'm thinking about this. And you say, come on, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. What you're telling the person is, you don't make sense. But why don't we process it? Let's hear you out. What is it that you are trying to communicate? What does this mean to you? How does this feeling occur to you? How does it touch you? What exactly is going on right inside your mind at this point? So nobody is more important than the other in relationships. And we have to understand that nobody Nobody, I say that again, nobody is more important in relationships than the other. Everybody is important. And no matter how senseless somebody's viewpoint might seem, there is something to learn from it. So I want to communicate this and I want to share this from the point of view of therapy and from the point of view of interhuman relationship. How do you enter into somebody's world to appreciate their viewpoints? When you appreciate their viewpoints, you are appreciating who they are, because their viewpoints are not just abstract realities. They help to form their identity, who they are, their power, their authority, and their level of confidence. So, I want to let you know that it's important to not dismiss people's thoughts, no matter how senseless, no matter how useless they may appear. And if you want to not take it, you can help the person to understand that, yes, there's something you're saying here. Okay, but let's look at it in this way. Let's look at it in this approach. Let's look at it in this manner, so that the person doesn't feel discarded with their ideas and with their thoughts. Otherwise, what happens is such persons begin to shut down. They begin to close up. They begin to feel like, what is the need speaking up anymore? Since it does not make sense. Why do I even speak up? Why do I even make contributions? Why do I even have to air my opinion if my opinion doesn't matter? This is a message that can help us in relationships, help us to build each other in a healthy, positive way.